Prime Minister Anthony Albanese gave his first speech of the year at the National Press Club today with a focus on Australia's security and stability. Joining me to discuss this and the day's news is Saturday Herald Sun columnist Steve Price. Steve, great to have you join the program. Look, superannuation has been the big topic this week. Despite the Treasurer's comments, the Prime Minister promised today there would be no significant changes to super. Have a listen to what he had to say.
Yeah, there's nothing that impacts the sustainability of the system from punters out there who've got $150,000 in their accounts. That's not an issue at all, which is the average. We said during the election campaign that we did not intend to make big changes to superannuation, and we don't.
Steve Price, who is right here? Is this a broken promise, as Dutton says, or is Albanese right?
That was a very tricky answer to that question, Sharri. I watched that entire press club speech from Anthony Albanese today, and I heard Jim Chalmers on Melbourne radio talking about the same thing. I think the key word there is big. Well, what's your definition of big changes? Now, most Australians struggle to understand superannuation. There's three types of super schemes. Obviously, you've got retail, you've got industry super, and you've got self-managed super funds. My prediction would be here that they're going to come after people who've got self-managed super funds. And they're not all rich people. There's a lot of people who want to manage their own super, don't want to put it in a super fund, many of them controlled by the union movement. And I just figure that Jim Chalmers and Anthony Albanese are going to find some way to get their sticky fingers on your superannuation. I would be very worried. And as someone who has a superannuation fund that I manage myself, I certainly believe what will happen is I'll be paying more tax in the future.
I mean, you'd have to think if this issue was raised during the election campaign, it might have had a difference to the way people voted.
I think absolutely, yes, because it is a complicated issue, super. And if you find a message coming out that if Labor wins the election, they're going to take your super off you, then that might have changed some votes. And they were very adamant, and it is a broken election promise. You can paint it any which way you want. Jim Chalmers was asked about 10 times by Neil Mitchell on 3RW today about, are you looking at the tax implications on super to the budget? And he refused to really say what he was going to do. He said, I'm an open book, I'm listening to all sorts of ideas. That's, Sharri, where you start to get worried.
Yeah. Now, I want to turn to the Greens and the Labor Party. There's brewing conflict between the two parties. The Greens has attacked the Labor Party, accusing it of making the climate crisis worse. These comments came after Tanya Plibersek approved the Santos gas expansion project in Queensland, a move that she didn't make a song or dance about at the time. She kept it very quiet last week. And Steve, as you know, Greens have demanded that Labor stop approving any new gas or coal projects. What do you think? Greens holding Labor hostage here because of the safeguard mechanism? It's a difficult position for Labor.
100%. 100%. They're holding their feet to the flame, to use an awful analogy. But Tanya Plibersek made a lot of noise when she cancelled a coal mine that Clyde Palmer wanted to open up in Queensland. But as you say, less of a noise about this Santos gas project. I mean, the Greens are going to be seen again, and it's history repeating itself. You were in Canberra the last time the Greens played the game of wreckers when it came to climate and climate change policy. And we all saw how that ended and what ended happening to people like Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd. The Greens can't be trusted on this. They will give a bit, but they're not going to give a lot. They're going to keep on with this mantra of you've got to shut every coal and gas project in Australia forever opening, and refusing to answer questions of, well, how are we going to keep the lights on if we do that? So the Greens will be seen as the great wreckers. Don't let people convince you Peter Dutton and the coalition are the wreckers. It's certainly the Greens. Adam Bandt and his crowd are the ones we've got to watch.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how Labor handles that and which side eventually does come to the table.